Welcome to Coruzant Technologies, home of the Digital Executive Podcast. Welcome to the Digital Executive. Today's guest is Sydney Anh Mai. Sydney Anh Mai is a product designer at Kickstarter. Born and raised in Hanoi, Vietnam, she spent her adolescence growing up in the United States. Her passion for purposeful interactions and optimized human workflows has taken her across various products, namely IBM, TD Ameritrade, and Embers. In 2020, she received 2 Indigo Design Awards and a .com award in user experience design. She most recently appeared as a guest writer on Design Week, the UK's leading online design magazine. Well, good afternoon, Sydney. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me on the show.
You're very welcome, Sydney. I appreciate you jumping on, and again, appreciate your story. We spent a couple minutes before we started with this podcast to kind of hear your story, and I'm excited to share your story with our global audience. So thanks again. And Sydney, we're going to jump right into the questions. You've got quite the career working in technology as a developer, and now you're the product designer at Kickstarter. Is that correct?
Yep.
Awesome. Could you share with our audience the secret to your career growth and what inspires you?
Yeah, absolutely. I will always revert to this moment back when I was 19 years old. I took this one class that changed my life. It was Intro to Web Design with Professor Joshua Klein at NYU. And in that class, I learned more than just HTML and CSS. I learned about principles of typography, of interaction, and overall principles of good UX. And after that, I sort of became obsessed with making websites, and I ended up minoring in web development. And my first job, I was actually a front-end developer at this big ad agency. And you're probably wondering how I went from that to product design. The truth is, if there was one skill that I own that gave me an edge as a designer, that is my coding skill. I understand the mechanics of the things that I designed, and that is so important when you're designing any sort of applications. You need to know how they're made, and you can't just treat a screen like a static piece of paper. And after my first job, I got hired as a product designer at a fintech startup, which was an extremely complicated B2B product to start out with, but it definitely taught me some really valuable design lessons. And currently I am at Kickstarter designing tools for creators. The one constant inspiration throughout my design career has been this one question: how can users do the very least and achieve the most? And honestly, thinking this way, I was able to see all my design challenges, not just as visual challenges, but workflow challenges. And just like that, the game is on. And I love to solve a tricky puzzle.
That's awesome. I love inspiring stories like that. As you know, everybody has their own unique story, Sydney, and I totally love that, how you kind of stumbled into this. And thank you again for sharing. Awesome. So as you know, everybody globally has had to make these major pivots and shift because of the pandemic. Could you share with us what you're doing to help your company stay relevant in this economy?
Yeah. So during the pandemic, many people turned to creative marketplaces like Etsy and Kickstarter to turn their side gigs into a sustainable stream of income. And Kickstarter was actually born after the economic downturn in 2008. And we've been around for a decade now, over a decade, bringing creative projects to life. And we've actually seen a significant number of projects launch last year, which was very encouraging for our business as it proves our utility during times of need. And last year, I actually led design for this feature called Add-on, which allows creators to set up, manage, and offer optional add-on rewards to backers, and just overall increase their funding amount. And the feature was launched to all creators just 2 weeks ago. So it was launched globally 2 weeks ago, and already seeing some really encouraging numbers. We're seeing over 20% adoption from just 2 weeks, and nearly a 30% lift in average pledge amount. So it was great to see creators making good use of a functionality that we introduced and bring more wonderful creations to the world.
That's awesome. Thanks again for sharing. Again, your stories bring some insights to others that have had to struggle through some of the challenging times that we're having today. So thank you again. And Sydney, let's talk a little bit about emerging tech. As you know, this platform is about emerging technology. What are your thoughts on why we should design fewer user interfaces?
Yeah, so I've always believed that the best user experiences are those that are invisible to the eyes. When users don't have to commit any explicit action, but their intended tasks are were still achieved. And in some cases, the software went above and beyond just achieving intended task, right? It predicts and informs user needs. It assists, you might call it, and I think Smart Reply on Gmail is an example of this. So without going too in depth, right? Smart Reply uses machine learning to predict possible responses to each clue in the speech and sort of synthesize them for final predictions. There's barely any UI if you use, Smart. You have it turned on your Gmail, and there's no processing work that is revealed or visible to the user's eyes. Yes, yeah, the results are still astounding and save you time from drafting your own responses. So I think if you start noticing, I think great softwares ask for really little and picks up a lot. And instead of requiring users to take an explicit action, like clicking a button or typing in a field or just interacting with the interface in general, these pieces of software sort of just draws patterns from existing user behaviors and uses that data to help users achieve their goals. And this is very much the direction in which I try to think as a designer as well. What are the traces and patterns that users leave behind in their user journey? What do those help inform us about their behavior and their preferences? And how do we use that very knowledge to predict and assist? And I think it all goes back to that question I had. That was my inspiration that I mentioned earlier. How can we allow users to do the very least and achieve the very most? Yeah.
That's very, very, very succinct, very to the point on, and a great reason why, we should be looking at the end of the day, the user experience. And I do appreciate that, Sydney. And Sydney, last question. Could you share something from your career experience that would be helpful for those looking to grow a career in technology?
Yeah. I would say if you're an aspiring product designer, I'd say the most valuable skill that you could pick up early on is coding. Try to build something at least once, not just mocking things up. I think this will open you up to a world of end-to-end concept to execution product design that you'll need to experience to become a true full stack product designer. And being able to quickly crank out a working prototype also enable you to become more resourceful and independent. And I think many young designers I've seen lately, I've been doing quite a bit of portfolio reviews lately. They all have stellar textbook sort of in a perfect world case studies in their portfolios. But when you start working on a real product, you'll find that a lot of times you'll have to be scrappy. And your job is not to design the best experience, but to design the best experience possible with a limited set of tools. And being able to code, being able to crank out just like a very scrappy front-end experiment to build something will serve you well in the long run. So if there's one skill that I am advocating for aspiring product designers to learn, that is learn how to code, learn how to program. Yeah.
Thank you, Sydney, for sharing that. Again, your perspective is unique in its own right, and it's again going to be a little nugget of inspiration for young developers out there like yourself. So I appreciate you sharing that. And Sydney, I just want to thank you. It's a pleasure having you on today, and I look forward to speaking with you real soon.
Thank you for having me.
Bye for now.